Just, can we have some? Thank you. It's been a bit stern to start with, so we don't really know where we start. Right, good evening, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to the June round of the Sittingbourne Area Committee at the Appleyard. That's, I think, our first meeting in Homewood. Right, I need to ask any members or officers in physical attendance with an electronic device to mute it to avoid feedback. I think I've done that. And I need to ask remote participants to keep their camera and microphone off unless they wish to speak, as this can affect the quality of the meeting. The meeting is being live webcast and the recording stays on the council's website. We are trialling some new equipment. It's called the OWL, and it picks up your voices, but it won't necessarily pick up your faces unless you get to within about 2 meters of it, for those who wish to remain anonymous. I don't know what I need to do with that. So I'd like you to welcome you all here, including any visiting members and members of the public. And I need to advise you the following officers are in attendance from Swell Borough Council. Head of Housing and Community Services, Charlotte Hudson, to my right. Active Travel Coordinator, Adrian Oliver. The Democratic Services, Janet Dart. And Billy Attaway remotely. We also have KCC Councillor Mike Dendell with his other hat on tonight, or both hats. Both hats on. And any other representatives of local organisations. So that would be Mark, the members of the Milton Regis Society, the members of the Milton Creek Country Park, and North Kent Rail Users Group, I think is the correct term. I need to remind you that if you wish to speak, I'll invite you in turn to show your hands, and you are cordially invited to state your name and the organisation you represent. And that would be the same for anyone attending remotely. I need to remind any members of the public attending remotely that the IM is not to be used for general chat. It is to be used for drawing attention, members for drawing attention to the chair if they want to speak. And any member of the public that uses the IM inappropriately may be removed from the meeting. We will have Jodie Foster attending lately, who will be speaking to an item. And we go on the page. Right, this is a new venue for, I think, most of us, although I'm a member now, so I kind of know my way around. There's no planned fire alarm test tonight. So if the alarm does sound, you just assume it's a genuine alarm. And I would suggest using these doors to my left here and remain in the car park until such time as you're invited back in. If anyone requires assistance in evacuating the building, can you make anyone from Scarborough Council Democratic Services aware of the special need? So good work. Agenda item 2, apologies for absence.
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Roger Truelove, Councillor Simon Clark and Councillor Derek Palmer.
Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any pecuniary or non-pecuniary declarations of interest to be mentioned?
Those from Creek Country Park and Dempsey Community Centre.
Thank you, Councillor Dender. Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Stroud Media Arts. And Milton Creek Country Park. Milton Regis Society.
Oh, yes.
Diversity, actually. Agenda item 4, the minutes. I'd like to ask members if they agree the minutes of the last meetings held on 8th of March 2022, minute numbers 656, 665, and the 18th of May 2022, minute numbers 31 to 32 as true records. Thank you very much. Agenda item 5, matters arising. Now, there are quite a lot of matters arising. Fortunately, though, there's a good deal of appendices here, isn't it? For you to read, which I assume you've already read them already, on the various work that's been done and an update on Kemsley Arms. On agenda item 1, though, matters arising in item 1, I'll ask Charlotte to speak on the entrance to the skate park and the Dolphin Barge Museum.
Yeah, certainly. In fact, actually later on the agenda, we do have a presentation from Mark from Raybell, and Mark's actually been looking into this on behalf of all the groups and the council, and has come up with some proposals that we sent to us recently that we are reviewing. So we're hoping by the next meeting that we'll have a resolution to that.
Thanks, Charlotte. Town Centre regen. I believe we made a minor amendment on Councillor Dender's recommendation. Even though the majority of the building work has been done and completed, there are still matters surrounding the letting. So we will take updates as and when anything further arises on the regular. Thank you, Councillor Dender, on that. Bomb shelter at Trots Hall. I've had no further update from the HRGS. And seeing as there's a very nice flower bed being laid across it, I doubt we'll be doing any ground resistivity tests until they've all died back. Otherwise, I think we'll be upsetting Sittingbourne in blue. I'm just going to go through the matters arising briefly. All right, I will on number 5, following on from Councillor Dender's question at the last meeting. I have made various attempts, and I'll speak to this now if I may, Charlotte. I've made various attempts to get a member of the police force to come down. I had an email back from Matthew Scott, PCC. He says that operational police matters and as such doesn't feel that he could attend. And an email back from Junior Dan, the new Chief Inspector. And he gave a list of 4 possible meetings that we could go to. Calc, which we can't because we're not parished and we have no town council. The community committee attended by cabinet level SBC, we have no cabinets. The community safety partnership executive nominated portfolio holders, again no cabinet, but I did attend the meeting last week as Richard Palmer was, Councillor Richard Palmer was absent, and obviously direct communication via email. And he says, I'm satisfied that these are adequate with regards to the number of opportunities available. Now, I did raise this issue at the CSP that we have no engagement in the town, in amongst the urban areas with the police on any forums at all. And Charlotte will speak to you in a minute. I did speak with Councillor Palmer and he is, sorry, I'll speak up a bit. And Councillor Palmer is going to try and request a member of the area committee is allowed to sit on the CALC forum. And if and when that becomes available, we can discuss that and who we want to sit on that forum at the appropriate time. The CSP was good, and I think, Charlotte, do you want to introduce the next bit? That the consultation.
Yes, certainly. So, as part of the update of the Community Safety Partnership, Chief Inspector Peter Porter's attended, and they are currently conducting a review into neighbourhood policing. As part of that review, they are seeking feedback from the council as an organisation, but other organisations as well, in terms of a number of elements around engagement with the police and also how, not necessarily the issues that you're experiencing in terms of crime and antisocial behaviour, but in terms of how the interaction with the police happens and how it responds to different issues and things like that. Because that consultation's only just come out and it wasn't in time for this round of area committees and they are looking to put their proposals together by September, what we will be doing is circulating out to all members some questionnaire so we can gather all members' views and put a formal response into that consultation as a council and make sure that we represent the views across the borough, because obviously as Councillor Davey has said, because this is an unparished area, there might not be as many opportunities, and we can make sure that that is represented in that feedback. Part of the update that was also provided was looking at the number of uniformed officers, that they do have targets to increase, but also the specialist roles that we also value and depend upon, as well as sort of area-based PCSO. So all of those types of things are in the mix of the review, but we will circulate the details that we've received as a consultation letter and make sure we capture members' views to feed back into that consultation, which I think is an incredibly important consultation to make sure we get a good service into our.
Thank you, Charlotte. I think it's worth mentioning that some of the reason behind the reluctance to attend the area committees was that individual specific cases were being raised, and the one that's been brought up is dogs fouling the pavement, which is not a police matter anyway. The idea of the consultation is that we look at the more holistic view of the major problems, e-scooters, motorbikes, etc., rather than specific cases. I think the police were suspecting they were going to be tied down with someone whistling about their neighbour doing such and such. Councillor Gibson, did you want to speak?
Yes, sorry, Steve. For me, it's regrettable that Matthew Scott has taken that view, because whilst it's strategically a policing matter in terms of his operations, he has stated in many occasions publicly that he is absolutely opposed to e-scooters. And if his officers on the ground aren't enforcing the law and his will and his promises to the community and my residents, well then I'm afraid I really do take issue with that.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Which is the very thing Councillor Denner raises. Councillor Denner.
Yes, simply to say I totally agree with Councillor Gibson on this. You well know from our last time. And yes, I think Matthew is touching the issue. He is known to be totally against these scooters. The figures here, the police advised the 42 people were educated. The education is simple. They are illegal. There's no education needed. Why are we allowing driving in the town today, yet again? Why are we allowing them to drive all over the place on illegal vehicles? I'm astounded that we're allowing people break the law like this. And I think it's not acceptable. I accept what Charles said, but I also think we ought to go to the police and say, we are in an unpunished area. All right, we can send one to Cal. We're not parish. They should come to here. They should come directly to us. We don't have another voice on any of the 40 games. So they should come and talk to us here.
I'll come to you, James, in Councillor Wood, second.
Yeah.
Charlotte's going to come back on that.
Just to say about obviously the 4 areas, I think where we only updated at the CSP last week about the changes from Cabinet to the committee process. So, Chief Inspector Dan would have only just been aware of that. So at the Communities Committee, the Communities Committee does have a overview and scrutiny role of the Community Safety Partnership, and I know a number of members are on that committee. So that probably, as a council, is your strongest voice and route into it. So there are representations within that, and the police will need to attend and to be scrutinised as part of the Community Safety Partnership.
Sorry if I could come back, with all due respect. We're told by the inspector himself that he attends a cup. We are told that he engages with parishes at that level. So why is Sittingbourne Area Committee knocked out because we haven't got parishes? I accept there's a higher level at which we can engage, and totally accept. But parishes all over Sittingbourne, apart from Sittingbourne itself, are engaging at a much lower level. Don't get it.
And we can take that up. I say that is an opportunity to take up through the neighbourhood policing review, which we can capture that and make sure that that is fed in. And it also can be raised at the Communities Committee to challenge that. And obviously, Councillor Palmer is looking at another option. So I think collectively, we are looking
Councillor Palmer and the committee.
And the committee, I think it's mentioned.
There are no cabinet members left in.
No, as chair of the committee. activity.
Yeah.
I think he was raising
That's true.
at that point. So I think there's opportunities to raise those issues and look at how we address that at the long term. I suppose that's where the situation is at the moment. We have points of engagement that we can look to do as we go forward.
I did tell Mr. Dan at the CSP meeting, so he is aware of the situation. Councillor Hall.
Yes, thank you, Steve. Over 2 years ago, maybe slightly more than 2 years ago, I actually had a meeting with Mr. Scott, and we had a subject we're talking about now, and he never got back to me. I had a lovely article printed in the local newspaper about it all. I showed him that as well, and as what Mike said, doesn't want to know. So I think someone should be done before about him. Because I've had a few meetings with Mr. Scott, and he's very reluctant to help. That's how I feel in there.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hall. That could be noted. Councillor Winkler.
I was just going to come in quickly, if you're aware, it's very bad for the price. With these scooters running across that area. I know we've been dealing with it, sort of directly as I understand, with the PCSO, but you know, we have got issues with it. I mean, we did manage to maintain quite a bit of it a while back, but that was arrested, punished. But every summer we seem to get a new lot crop up again, and that's amazing.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Winkler. Yeah, it's an overall issue rather than specific cases, which I think they're worried about. And I hope we can get some form of better engagement with our area committee going forward. I know Councillor Hall mentioned he may know someone that you may be able to get in touch with. I forget who said it was, and Councillor Dender as well. Both mentioned that you may be able to get someone to come down, but that would need to be through Jack.
Sorry to interrupt you, but we're having difficulty hearing over here from members and yes.
Okay, I'll try and speak a bit louder. I'll try and project.
I'll throw the voice.
Yeah, okay, I will have to start shouting a bit now. At the CSP, it was announced that they were bringing in 175 officers into Kent, which will put Kent at the highest level ever. But I'd also pointed out that Matthew Scott is somewhat worried that the Met will nick them because the Met were paying golden hellos. There was an article about 2 weeks ago, which I mentioned at the meeting. It also means that the PCSO recruitment has been frozen as PCSOs are going into the service. And that's where we are at the moment. Hopefully with this review, we can let them know what the concerns are at the grassroots level. It's about police knowing the patch, and the PCSOs know the people better than the police because they're coming from disparate police stations. They're not even based in the town half the time. And so that was something else we can raise. Also, I will mention very briefly, it's nothing to do with this specifically, but the Swell Safe, or whatever they call it, is going to be relaunched soon. The new radio system, I believe it's called Safer Together.
Yes.
Is that it's going to be called, right?
Yes.
Safer Together. It's a new system that will be run by us, not the police. It'll be run from the multi-storey car park, and the police will be in on the airwaves. So this should benefit the businesses in the high street. Again, I was told today of an incident in the high street. Continue at ASP. I saw some on the way back who'd obviously been stealing from the local shop. So it's something that we can look forward to. I think we have Jackie, who's put his hand up. Did you want to speak, Jackie? No? Oh, you're just waiting. And Councillor Rolls.
Yes, Chair. My point, being on the high street most of the time at 34, I do see visually police officers quite regularly. Nothing like last year. They are definitely on the floor now, parading the high street, and also talk, which is good, talking to problem makers,
Yeah.
which visually one sees, and it is the cyclists as well as the scooters.
Thank you, Councillor Rolls.
Chair, should I just ask Councillor Rose a question? Are they PCSOs or police? Please.
Yes, today there was two.
Excellent.
Good, that's good. Okay, we'll try and power through the rest of these. Kempsey Arms, there is an appendix, bus services. there was an update on the matters arising, and I know Jackie will be speaking in the public forum. Staplehurst Road,
Can I ask, sorry, Chair, could I ask on Kempsey Arms, if there's any further update? I don't know.
No, I haven't received anything further, but I can ask tomorrow and get any further update on that.
You know, I would like an update as soon as possible. Obviously, I know there's a new head of plan, we've never met him yet.
well,
Right.
very good,
Pardon?
very good.
Yeah, so it's obviously got to get feasible, I understand, but 2.5 years is too long.
I've already sent her a couple of questions, Councillor Dender.
Thanks.
Staplehurst Road, is there anyone who attended JTB last night? Which would probably exclude some of the audience. There is the new implementation of Part 6 of the Traffic Management Act 2004, which enables local highway authorities to prosecute certain crimes on the road, so right turns, overweight vehicles, etc., which they can do with ANPRs. At this stage, there's no way of engaging. They've already, I think if you go to the website, there's around 9 sites they've already identified, but there will be a consultation process coming forward that will allow members and I guess members of the public to put forward specific areas where there are accidents near accidents because people are breaking a very simple law, such as the no right turns at the bottom of Milton Hill, where everyone ignores it and just cuts across the traffic. So there'll be areas like that. Once that comes through, which won't be till, I think, September, if I remember rightly.
It'll be next year.
Next year, it's actually going to be implemented. Once the consultation comes through, we'll make sure everyone, well, the council will send it around, I guess. Councillor Dendon,
Point on that, Chair, please.
of course you can.
Because expectations are being raised.
Yes, as we discussed, yes.
It is only by camera. So it won't be county officers walking around it. And the citing of the cameras will have the same sort of rules as the citing of a speed camera. That is, there's got to be statistics to prove that they are desperately needed in that profession. So it isn't a simple process of saying stick the camera on. It'll be quite a long process of looking at the stats, looking at the dangers, and then selecting the specific ones that need it most.
Thank you, Councillor. It's a good point, yes. KCC cover a very wide area and they won't be putting in hundreds of cameras.
No.
And that was pointed out last night at the meeting, that it needs to be marketed very carefully, that it's going to be very specific areas. Thank you, Councillor Dendon. The bollards in Milton High Street, Councillor Winkle's idea, and I have informed him that he needs to pursue that following Simon Algar's comments on it, and it would be down to you to continue following up on it.
I will ask further questions.
Thank you.
Okay.
You should see in the pack the photos of the work that was carried out in Milton High Street, thanks to the area committee funding, and in part to replace part of the council infrastructure because they'd run out of money, to replace the damaged rail and bollard. And I've had a quote for the resurfacing of the car park in Milton Regis and lining, which again, they say they can't afford. It's about 11 grand at the moment. Heritage issues, yes, there's been an update. Improvements to lighting, again, nothing's come back from KCC on the work I've asked to be done in Milton High Street. The Swarborough Council website was a survey the other day. Yes, I completed it. So that's been done. Appendix on the Periwinkle Watermill site. You can see the update for Roman Square and sports facilities still being worked on. And again, an update on the local heritage list. And the Swell Media Arts Centre updated in Appendix 5.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come back on the periwinkle watermill side?
Of course you can.
The land ownership issues, do we know any more details about that?
Only what's in the appendix, that's all I've heard. Again, I walked past it the other day. It's looking very, very sad. Yeah. And dangerous now. A lot of the grills are missing, and if you do get over the fence, you're likely to take a tumble. And that will come back onto the council, no doubt. Councillor Winkless.
Periwinkle site, I know council Williams.
Could you speak up, Tony, please?
Sorry, yeah. On the Periwinkle site, I also understand councillor Williams, been made aware of this. There is quite a strong smell of sewage, which we understand is some water responsibility. I smelled it myself last, but also, on the path, to the church street, between Plymouth and the boundary of the mill, which stated here is a lot of work done, it's crumbling.
Yes.
It may dangerously crumble, so
Yeah.
it certainly does need some quite serious attention.
Yeah, yeah. I think it is a health and safety hazard at the moment, as it is.
Yes, it definitely is.
So, Councillor Denner, please.
Yeah, if I just add to that, I mean, I'm interested you said last week, 2 weeks ago, I think, Southern Works were in, they cleared a whole drain between the two corners. I haven't heard from the rest of them, don't know if you again. He hasn't come back to say the smell is still there, so I don't know if it's still there.
He contacted me again yesterday when they were my car, he said there had been no further work done as far as
Well, they were in
trouble is paid.
other contract.
Thank you, Councillor Winkless. Councillor Denner. Right, that was matters arising, which I managed to make longer and longer every single meeting. Are there any other questions on any of the matters arising from any members or members of the public? Not all hands.
Can I ask a question?
Of course you can, Chair.
I probably shan't. What criteria get to building onto the heritage list?
That's a very good question that I will get someone to email you about. So,
I think,
yeah, there's obviously a technical process to do that.
I mean, I know the listed criteria, but this is.
Yeah,
heritage.
the heritage list is something slightly different, but yeah, we can get an answer circulated.
I mean, specifically, I think that comes in.
I believe at the last meeting, or one of the meetings Simon spoke at, they are working out the consultation for that at the moment, I believe, if that can be double checked. I think it came when he did the update at Kemsley. They were looking at how to add assets to the heritage listing. I'm not sure if they were going to release a document, but I'm not sure that's come out yet.
No.
No. Thank you, Councillor Dendar. Right. LC Wick. So we have. Oh, it's going to Adrian, who's going to speak on LC Wick, the local cycling walking infrastructure plan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you this evening about the LC WIP. I'm Adrian Oliver. I joined Swale Borough Council at the very end of February this year. I have, as the active travel coordinator, my job has two main strands. The first one is to encourage, enable, and help and advise anybody in the borough who is undertaking an active travel, such as cycling and walking initiative. So with the other area committees in Western area, we're working on some walking trails. Sheppey, they're working on a cycling, they're working with Cycling UK on a new community cycling club, which the leaders were trained for last weekend, so that's all going ahead. We're also looking at a cycling and recycling scheme on Sheppey. In the eastern area, we're looking at apparences to town initiative to understanding people's movement from the sort of rural environment to the towns. And I'm sorry, I'm getting too close to Howell here.
It wasn't sure.
And they have a cycle, Faversham Town Council has a cycle festival at the beginning of July, from 1st to 10th July, which we're also helping. So lots of different initiatives. However, that's only one half of my job. The other half of my job is the local cycling walking infrastructure plan, that in shorthand we call an LC WIP, because I can't keep saying local cycling walking infrastructure plan all evening. An LC WIP is a 10-year strategic plan that really is looking at our built environment and about improving the infrastructure to enable walking, wheeling, cycling. LC WIPs were launched back in 2017, so they're 5 years old. However, so this is the Department of Transport document that launched it. However, they didn't really catch on until 2020, when the government published Gear Change, which is, as it says on the front here, a bold vision for walking and cycling. And it's great. I mean, it really does put cycling and walking right up there with other transport initiatives. And that's the point, really. We've seen all these sort of walking and cycling and active travel initiatives before, decades of it. However, what's different now is that the ambition of Gear Change is actually to really transform the role of walking and cycling in our transport systems. So it's not just saying, yeah, everybody should get on a bike or walk everywhere. It's saying, actually, if you're going to take that journey from here to here, can you do that by walking and cycling? So that's the difference between sort of what's gone before for the last 20 years, 30 years, I can remember, and what was announced by the government through Gear Change in 2020. And there's some substance behind this. So, yeah, there's a £2 billion budget. We've never had 2 billion, we never had any money for specifically for walking and cycling from the Department of Transport. So this is lovely to actually have some specific budget allocated. And that 2 billion is for the life of this parliament. They issued, oh my goodness, this is the cycle and infrastructure design manual, and there's a walking one coming too. This is called LT120. Thank goodness there's something short we can use. LT120, and it's just incredibly different to what we've had before. Gone are the days when you can put a stripe down the pavement and say that side's walking and that side's cycling. That's not allowed. For a start, you've got to treat cycling as transport. So it's the same as any other vehicle on highways now. So it's a very different world we're in now. And there's a group, a new executive body that's been established called Active Travel England, under the leadership of an active travel commissioner called Chris Boardman, the Olympian. His job, or Active Travel England's job, is to make sure we all obey the rules. And they're doing that really quite smartly, because they're saying if you don't obey the rules, you don't get the money in the first place. And if you appear to obey the rules and you put some infrastructure in that doesn't actually work according to the rules, we'll have that money back. Thank you very much. So it's really quite a draconian approach, but it's what has got to be done. And there's already been councils around the country that have fallen foul of the Department of Transport and Active Travel England. Brighton put in a cycle track along the road, got some complaints from motorists, took it out. Active Travel England said, you didn't really review that properly. We'll have our money back, thank you very much, and you're not getting any more for another year. So really quite draconian. Worcester said these were just guidelines. They're not going to pay any attention to this. The last round of funding, which was announced back in end of May, they got nothing. So it really is quite a serious situation, and it will impact our highways funding. So if we don't do active travel initiatives in Kent to a significant enough level that active travel would accept, then there's a very high likelihood that the highways funding as a whole will be cut. So active travel has to be part of our initiatives, highway initiatives. So going back to the LTV, The LCWIP is a plan that allows us to access those funds. Without an LCWIP, we don't get the funds. You have to have that, and an LCWIP is to improve our built environment, to enable walking and cycling. And during the LCWIP, we will create a walking network and we'll create a cycling network. And that then generates a whole list of works. And those interventions could be anything. They could be from a bollard. You've already mentioned bollards. Bollards, brilliant things. But simple, cheap interventions. It could be from a bollard through to a cycle track, on the carriageway or off the carriageway. But it's going to be a separated cycle track, so not mixing with cars and not mixing with pedestrians. It could be as simple as putting more drop curbs in. It could be as simple as repairing our pavements. But whatever it is, all these networks have to be demand driven. There's no point us sort of something, well, we're going to fix that pavement, we're going to put that drop curb over there, we're going to do this, if people don't want them. So the stage of the LCWIP we're in at the moment is stage 2, which is information gathering. This is why I need your help, because I need you and I need your residents to tell me what needs to be done to enable them to swap an everyday journey from the car to walking and cycling. As I said, it could be anything. It could be improvements to pavements. It could be putting some cycle parking in. Not I'm hinting that this actual venue has no cycle parking at all. Despite being next to park, despite being very nice. So, and the way we're going to capture this information is we're going to do a paper survey, we're going to do an online survey, and I'm happy to attend any meetings with any community groups or any other groups and resident groups to talk about this and to get their feedback on the things that they feel they need to improve, to enable them to walk, cycle or wheel. So, why is active travel sort of the big thing now? Why is it important now? Well, it's important now because actually it's a relatively cheap intervention to solving some of society's problems. And yeah, those problems, you all know them. You know, the health crisis, the climate crisis, air pollution, noise pollution, congestion, cost of living. They all impact. They can all be impacted positively by us all trying to walk and cycle and wheel a little bit more. But all of those things are just co-benefits of walking, cycling, wheeling. Because the main benefit of rebalancing our streets away from cars to people is that it just improves our towns. It would improve Sittingbourne. It would certainly make Sittingbourne a safer place to be. Unfortunately for Sittingbourne, the statistics for collisions is quite horrendous. I'm going to refer back to my notes on this because I've looked up the collision statistics for the last, going back to when they started back in 1999. And over that period, there's been nearly 1,500 collisions. There were nearly 2,000 casualties. Now, a casualty, I hate the way they class casualties. They're either fatal or they're serious or they're slight. And I don't think there is any such thing as slight casualty when it's involving a car that's hit or a lorry that's hit someone. I don't think that's ever going to be slight. However, amongst those casualties, you have got 8 deaths, 2 of them last year. So looks like 2022, then 2020. That's not right. We shouldn't live in a town where it's that dangerous. So we have to rebalance our streets. We have to really take back our streets away from cars and actually have to make them nicer places to be. And make our streets places where we can play, meet, chat, even. Places where we can feel safe and. Any questions?
Okay, I'll start from the left, I think. Bob, you'll go first.
In this new government paper,
Yes.
are they going to turn the clock back and do away with swiping on the pavement, the most irritating thing for us old people? Because, you know, when did this illegal practice become a conventional thing?
Well, I can tell you exactly when it became a thing, it was in the 90s. So you're right, it's not that long ago, and it became a thing because actually, the government at the time was trying to create this wonderful cycling network across the country for the millennium. But actually to achieve that quickly and, let's be honest, cheaply, they said, well, yeah, if the pavement's wide enough, we can put some sign, you make it into a shared path.
Shared space.
Shared space. And no, it's not right. And this is why this paper says we have to treat bicycle as a vehicle, not as a pedestrian. Winding back the clock is hard, but it's going to be done. And if if there are places in Swale where there is shared space, then we need to look at that and say, well, can we put in a segregated cycle track? Now, I'm saying, can we put in a segregated cycle track? Let me explain. We can put a plan together, and it's a 10-year plan, stretching across, from 2023 to 2033. But we've still got to apply for money. And there's still a two-stage process to that, because we've got to go to CAT. then Kent have to go to the Department of Transport or the active travelling. So there's quite a long way. However, the Department of Transport and active travelling won't be the only source of funding. There will be other opportunities for funding, and we will search them out as well as we can. But we've got to have a plan first.
Thank you. Yes, Chris, Nick, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to say this, Sittingbourne's not the same place as it was in 1990. You've got twice as many houses,
Yeah, you have.
Statistics, it's not right, really, is it?
No, and that's part of the problem, isn't it? Because we've got so many more houses, so many more people, and so many more people driving on the infrastructure that's the same as it was before they went to that state. One of my roles is also to work with planning policy and planners on future developments. So we are, and Active Travel England will become a statutory consultee on developments in the future.
Good. Thank you. We'll go back left a bit because I've done a hands come up. I do apologise, members. Jocelyn.
Are there any stats cyclists injuring pedestrians? We're talking about not shared pavement.
Yes, there are. There's none reported incidents.
Jocelyn asked if there were stats on cyclists injuring pedestrians.
Or cyclists.
I think the fact that I think you've got to change your focus. So you've got to change your focus. You can't be cursing cyclists about injuring pedestrians because that is a very rare thing. So don't get that out of proportion. What is happening every day in Sittingbourne? Cars frightening and injuring people. So let's change the focus a bit here.
Yeah, because we go used to cycle, and I used to be a district nurse, and we're like,
Oh, fantastic.
putting down the bike now.
No, and that's a tragedy.
Yeah.
That's a tragedy. That's what we've got to change.
Right. Any more hands? Jackie, did you want to speak?
Yes, please. As a cyclist and walker for a long time, one of the biggest problems we found is that the people just don't know where you can cycle and where you can't cycle. Sometimes the routes are not clearly, they're not marked.
Yep.
Yeah. Secondly, there's certain areas where it's just absolutely dangerous to try and cycle down some roads.
Yep.
Now, what, as well as Bob said about the cycling pavements, when I was, a few years ago, like a long time ago, I got stopped by the police because of the speed I was doing.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I was, no, I was actually stopped, you know, first doing stop at 25, no, try 38. No, I was like younger then, and I like to bike. But the truth is, a lot of these people are cycling, they probably don't realise how fast they're going.
Yeah.
I know there's a joke, Japan, the quickest way to get on Japan is on a pedal bike. Tokyo on a pedal bike. But yeah, the truth is, and that, you know, this is one of the problems, that where people get worried, they think they're going to get hit because of cyclists. Some cyclists riding so fast on the pavements, they don't know how fast they're going. This, I think the two things, one, that would be is look at what we've got and see how can it be further.
Yeah, so the process we're in at the moment is to assess what infrastructure we have
Yeah,
and ask people their thoughts on that, and also ask people their thoughts on what infrastructure we need. And in terms of speed, yes, but it comes back to the sharing thing. We shouldn't really be having pedestrians and cyclists sharing the same space.
Thank you, Jackie. Councillor Hall?
Yeah, thank you, Brian. You mentioned from 1999 there was 1,500 villages and 2,000 properties.
Yeah,
You kept referring to Sittingbourne, but did you actually mean Swale?
no,
Sittingbourne.
that's just, and that's excluding 249. So the boundary I put, it was literally around Sittingbourne for that, those statistics.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Councillor Rolls?
This comes in two parts. I'll be as brief as possible. On the pavement, in the high street, is cyclist dispatch.
Right.
It's visible, it can be seen, the signs are up. Nobody does anything about it. I don't think there's much people can do about it. What the complaints that I'm getting a lot of is the people with buddies who can't get past A-frames in the high street. And when they complain about it, they're told it's the business's responsibility. Now, as a councillor, I'm saying I think it's our responsibility to make sure these A-frames are not causing. I mean, I'd like to have an A-frame outside my establishment, but I don't do it because of what I just said.
I might need to help me on this one, but as I understand it, A-frames in the high streets go through the planning process.
yes.
They do, and there's also a KCC Highways application form as well. But equally, if there is consistent complaints, I think you can also complain to KCC because of that. I think the difficulty is the level of enforcement to be able to do something about it. And of course, you write to people, they go in for a while, then they creep out. So it's one of those consistent things, having the resource to be able
In
to.
some businesses have 3 or 4. And there's some that the payment is large enough, they can take it. But there's others, it's not supported, and it is causing problems.
It's interesting because it does form a lot of what we're looking at here. So we're looking at obstructions on our pavements because they're as bad as a poor pavement, aren't they? If you can't get past, then it's an issue. And I understand that in places around the country, there has been mass banning of A-boards in my streets. So, you know, it could come to that. Could come to that.
Councillor Gibson?
Yeah, just to bring back on what Councillor Hall was talking about the collisions, and 1,500 and 2,000 casualties, I think you quoted in Sittingbourne.
Yep.
How does that compare with other towns of similar size?
I haven't had time to look at towns of similar size, but I can tell you that it's, if you take a town like Sheerness, which is about a quarter of the size of here, their statistics are nowhere near that. So, but I will at some point hopefully find time to do a proper comparison, because there's what, 26,000 people here. 26? Something like that. 36,000 residents.
Depends where you spend that.
Exactly, there's a trouble with that.
Yeah,
Where's the-
give or take. So it'd be useful to know.
Yeah, what I can also say is obviously the road network and the road infrastructure is much different than it would be on Sheerness, or than it is in Sheerness, and would be that it is in Sheerness. And so I come from a bit of a personal background to this, having attended many travel missions and so on over the years in a professional capacity. Interestingly, I kind of found out where your data sets came from, because there are other issues around collisions that don't get reported, so non-injury RTCs
Yeah.
report.
These are stats 19 figures, so these are reported. So good, yeah, we could guesstimate what the real figure is, but I'm just giving you what the stats 19 figure is. And as you know, having attended RTAs, there shouldn't be one. Yeah, we should have a total intolerance to that sort of behaviour. So yeah, we can haggle about the figures, but there shouldn't be one.
Yeah, and I come back as well, just very, very quickly, to the most recent death in Sittingbourne High Street, involved a cyclist, not a car, on a day when the high street was closed with pedestrians, and so the boss very quick said, well, let's not focus on what Lily's talking about. It is, there is a factor there, and it's we should consider.
I would be interested to know a lot more about that incident. If you can let me know. Yeah.
Thank you, councillor Gibson. Ready? Councillor Hanks.
I think it's going to take a huge mindset change to make something like this work.
Yes.
But recently, I've seen this sort of thing happen, where a city had a ring road of cycle tracks all around it. It was a small city. And inside, it was basically a shared space where pedestrians and cyclists, and when I say cyclists, I don't mean lycra clad.
No.
I mean women in dresses that were probably, well, there's definitely onto the knee with dogs in the front of the basket. It was a way of life for them. Their bikes were probably as old as they were. And dare I say, e-scooters were part of the equation there as well. You could hire them, like, I'm going to say Boris bikes, so that's how I remember them. And it all worked really, really well. I think as a driver, I'm a driver, but I'm also a cyclist. It may surprise you to know that I've done a 200-mile bike ride. No, not tonight. Next time.
Well, what's the reason?
Yeah. It worked, but we had got to get away from the car as key. However, my son cycles to work every day. He does a 10-mile. But the facilities are there in his workplace to allow that to happen. He has a locker there, a shower facility. Fabulous. And you get many people wanting to cycle to work in the summer. They end up with sweaty at work, and that's not very nice. But they are fair weather cyclists. What do they do in the winter? So it's more than just this, the cycle paths and the free space. Actually, Exhibition Road is free, well, I think, seems to work very well then. And all the cars are very, very careful. It can work. That's my point. I've seen it.
Absolutely. And there's a whole host of issues you've just raised.
I know.
So just to quickly answer some of those, this is all about everyday journeys. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. It's not the lycra clad crowd I'm trying to get more people into. I don't want to see you. Honestly, I do not. What I would like to see is dressed like this and out on bikes. I came this evening on my bike. It's parked outside against some very old railings. I hope it's secure. But, you know, and this is how I cycle. I cycled to work this morning. I hope I didn't put the rest of the office off because I didn't have a shower. But then I do try not to break too much into a sweat. So it is about those everyday journeys, those simple things. It's whether you can think, do I need to drive 5 minutes down the road, or can I just do that on the bike for a few minutes? Can I walk to that? So it's not even all about cycling. And it is really, we are trying to create those nirvanas. Okay, we are trying to create those places where everybody can just get about, but under their own steam. You know, that's really what it is all about. And yes, the soft stuff will have to follow. The very clear direction we're being pushed in at the moment is get the infrastructure in place, then do all the soft stuff, then do all the promotion and working with businesses and working with schools, but get the hard stuff done first. And that is hard stuff.
President?
Where do I start and how long have you got?
I've got as long as you lot will allow me.
I absolutely support active travel time, cyclists and leave where you can. But motorists are not criminals. We are not criminals. And I'm sick and tired of getting it hammered into me from all quarters that we are bad driving the car. It's not the case. So the motorists have to be taken into consideration as well. I look around me here. We're all of a certain age, apart from that side, I think. I particularly have hip problems, back problems, and I can't. I mean, it's just impossible. I can't. And I'm sure a lot of people here still going there to work or whatever. They don't have a choice. Point one. Point two is, you're right about Sittingbourne, but go for the first reason. The roads are absolutely atrocious. If you try and put, well, I'll tell you a story. We had one story earlier on, but my son, who is 40 minutes, but when he was going to walk the grammar school just across the road here, he was cycling. And I had a policeman come to me one day and say, look, I've had to talk to your son. He's cycling on the pavement on the way. I turned round to the policeman and I said, yeah, I told him to. And you can do what you like to me, and you'll still cycle on the pavement in the way, because I want him alive, please. The roads here for cyclists are dangerous. They are absolutely dangerous. Yes. And I see Jackie back in the off there. Now, you say to the infrastructure, you'll need a damn sight more than £2 million. Well, believe you me, a lot more than £2 million. KCC tried pop-up cycle routes, you probably know about this, and other counties, which you said about right, absolute disaster. Total and utter disaster. There was riots all over the place. They put them in the most stupid places, interrupting the flow of traffic, yes, and got objections from just about everybody, except, of course, from cyclists. It's got to be a balance. It has to be a balance between the two. My own ideas, I totally agree that putting a little white line on the pavement is absolutely absurd, and I'd love to see those go. Yes. I worked a lot in Holland, and thanks to Jules, who wiped out Rotterdam, they've got the most brilliant cycling infrastructure there is, because they're totally separated from the road, totally separated from the traffic. It is an absolute joy. Find any road in Sittingbourne, you can do that. We'll be doing purchase all over the place. I could name road after road after road in Sittingbourne, Sunshine, Steve, Tony, and others down as well. What are you going to do? Where are you going to put this segregated cycle? I have one idea. PROWs. They're all over the place. We've got paths going through fields, you've got paths going all over the place. Now, I know the walkers can have it. But if you're going to put 2 billion in, put them in there and give them the roads, those paths for cyclists as well, and get them off the roads. That's my own feeling anyway. I did want to ask about the stats. I was going to say how many collisions were with cyclists or pedestrians. I think that was already raised. I think most of those collisions are car to car. Well, let's face it, one of the...
Just really quickly on that one, car to pedestrian.
One of the things is done, not to hide it, but we also have rubbish drivers. So one of the things we should be doing is getting better driving and educating the drivers. So maybe not for this, but it's something we should be doing. I'm horrified sometimes when I watch some of the standards of driving. I think you've got the, grass verges, that was the other one. Yes? Another whole favourite of mine. Great big 15-foot grass verge wide. People just park on the thing and churn up the grass, churn up the mud, destroy inches. I've got a good idea. Take the grass verge away, stick the cycling lane right the way down. Okay? Get rid of them and put cycling lanes in there. There's one. But yeah, 2 billion. I can't see it doing much, quite frankly, across the country.
No, yeah, just going through those points. So the 2 billion, no, it's not enough. Nowhere near enough. As I said, we will have to find other sources of funding. So 2 billion, got 2 billion only for the next up until 2025. Yet there is obviously aspirations that the next budget will be even larger, as long as we can prove the interventions are actually making a difference and making our places better. So, talked about balance. Well, I'm going to talk balance back to you really, because for the last 60 years, the balance has been the car. Okay. And yeah, we all have cars here. We all drive everything, but it shouldn't be our first automatic response to get in the car just to do those short journeys.
Sorry to interrupt on this, but this is a dormitory town. For London.
It was.
It is.
It was. It's not anymore. It's not anymore. Because a lot of those trips to London aren't happening. Not every day. Not every day. So you're no longer a dormitory town. You're a town that has a huge industrial park. You're a town that has retail. You're a town that has working from home people, as well as people who go off to Canterbury or go off to Hampshire or go off to Ashford or go off to Maidstone or go off to. So, yes, it's a dormitory town of sorts. The dormitory towns have changed, and I think you've got to change with them.
I mean, cross country, there is no other option really.
No, I'm not saying that those are the trips we need to replace. I'm saying that the trips that we're making in town, we need to think about. Yeah, absolutely. The roads are atrocious. Yes. Whose fault's that? That's underinvestment for goodness knows how many years. And we're talking about investment into that infrastructure now. And when I talk about roads, I'm talking about pavements as well, which have been completely ignored for the last goodness knows how many years. So I'm talking about rebalancing away from cars to investment in pavements, investment in, yes, cycle tracks. If we get them on that grass verge, even better, brilliant. But it's again, I use the word again, tragedy that actually you made that decision that the only place your son could cycle was, well, he's now 40, so he can make his own decisions now, but the only place he could cycle safely was on the pavement, and that's the wrong thing. And actually, that is a driver for what we are trying to achieve now in terms of active travel. We shouldn't be, as parents, thinking, we can't go those 500 metres to park safely on our bikes because the traffic is too important. That's a desperately, desperately sad situation to be in. The pop-up thing, you're right. A lot of them were wrong. A lot of them were mistakes. They were done in absolutely no time at all by a government that insisted that the funding had to be spent within 6 months. Frightening amount of work had to be done, but they were successful in a lot of places. Absolutely they were. Thankfully, life has changed and life has moved on. So this next round of funding, which is 500 million, is about a 3-year program. So it is, and we will get more time to apply for it than we did in the last 3 rounds of funding. Public rights of way, yeah, they play a role. Absolutely. They play a more strategic role connecting perhaps our rural settlements to the town and perhaps our major conurbations with each other. But actually, yeah, it's a role that we will need to discuss with PROW to absolutely like. Yes. You're right.
Thank you, members and members of the public. We're going to need to wrap this item up. I know we've got a couple coming back. Mr. Hall, Councillor Hall, please.
It's very quick. There's regard the bike tenders conversation about the roads not being adequate, cyclists, etc. But just to give you one example, Swale Way, which is on to the Scotland State, Kent County Council implemented a 2-mile long cycle route, and for the last 14 years it hasn't been used. So that's it.
That was when we went and walked and we saw the cyclists on the road and not on the cycle path. I mentioned it when my son cycled to work. He cycled around there during lockdown to get exercise. He said it's horrendous. He'd much rather cycle on the road. Across the shop because of keep stopping. If you're wanting to go directly at the reason to speed, go on the road rather than on that side.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Hall, did you have anything more to add on that?
Oh, that's been thanks.
Thank you. And Councillor Winkers?
I just briefly, I mean, we've got a limited cycle pathways, not set wide. And I'm all for encouraging cycling and cyclists, especially to get greener, use that phrase. But one thing that's concerned me with sort of a general sense now, national legislation that's carrying new highway code. I won't go deep into the pedestrian side of things. I am, correct me if I'm wrong, talking about actually on the road. Cyclists now can cycle a little bit further distance from the pavement or the curb if they're, say, 2 cyclists together or 3. Now, to me, the traffic on the road, I mean, Councillor Dennis slightly touched on it. That, to me, that is a thing to do with legislation, especially not.
Yeah, in the highway code, well, first of all, the highway code, the last changes to the highway code put in a pyramid of priority. Priority starts with pedestrians. That's the most important element. And then it's cyclists, and then it's cars, and then it's HGVs. So it goes down a list like that. In terms of cycling on the road, 2 abreast is perfectly acceptable. Sometimes that's the safest place to be. It gives people to do a short overtake rather than a long overtake. And in terms of cycling away from the curb, everybody should cycle at least 1 step away from the curb. That's been proven to be the safest way for cyclists to act on the road.
Through you, Chair.
Yes, if you can make it very quickly, please, Councillor Dendon. We need to move the.
Yes, I just
on.
want
Yes.
to use another example when you brought up, from what's been brought up, the lower road at the Forster. Yeah, and try going down there sometimes with someone and driving along the road. You will. You go round a blind bend, it was 3 cycles.
Please speak up.
Straight to the windscreen. You know, I mean, it's horrific down there. It's a road absolutely not suitable either for motorists or for cyclists.
I think country lanes really do need to be looked at very hard. We need to understand why drivers are on some of those country lanes. I would refer you to the lower road from Sittingbourne to Poor. That's not appropriate for drivers. there's the A2 for goodness sake.
Hmm.
It's a great road for cycling.
Yeah.
Right, thank you, members and members of the public. I have something very briefly to say to you, Adrian, because we need to move on. I've had a message come in from Sue Pito. She says she's emailed you. Can you contact her at Merston Hart? And I have a question. Can I have your email address and the time to go and visit a walking route, please?
Yes.
Thank you. That's my question, isn't
My email address is adrianoliver@swell.gov.uk.
Oh, okay, similar, no dot in the way.
No dot in the way,
Okay.
adrianoliver@swell.gov.uk, and please do get in contact.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Thank you, members and members of the public.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, we're a very engaging area commissioner. Okay, we need to get the agenda moving on. We do have some speakers here now, and we do have a presentation to get through. So we need to go to agenda item 7, the public forum, and I believe we have one speaker, which is Jackie. And I'm getting grizzles from some of the members here that they can't hear, so can you please elucidate?
I will try. As most of you might know, my main interests are basically concerned around public transport, rail and buses. Now, what I would like council, two things we need is to get these grad two routes that not get very years ago, which went back 40 odd years, but it's now dwindled down because of various things. We need to get that going again, and that's quite useful. And also the bus route that we started. And just need publicity at present, asking if you can actually put notes amongst your board members to try and encourage, see if they're interested in joining these, getting these groups restarted again.
Thank you, Jackie. You've got my email address.
Yes,
Please send me through the details,
yes,
and we will try and get that on,
yeah,
promoted on the next agenda, and the contact details put through to members, maybe through Phil. See if we can get something done through comms at Swell Borough Council.
yeah, I'll send it a link to you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Anyone else from the public forum who would like to speak? Brilliant, fantastic stuff. Right, agenda item 8, local issues. Are there anything specific or non-specific that members would like to raise briefly on local issues? Councillor Dendron.
And I will be properly.
I hope so.
Yes, I thought I might, I wasn't going to do this, but I thought after Adrian's talk, I thought I might go to Saxon Shore. There's been quite a bit of confusion about where Saxon Shore goes. I'm sure Sue is online. I'd like to trace that, get somebody together and find out exactly where it goes. I'll do it on the county side, yeah.
Please, yeah, it's KCC run, isn't it, Saxon Shore? It's all PRRW.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And trace it, but maybe come back to you and report on that.
Brilliant.
Maybe
It sounds like a good plan.
There's still some confusion.
Thank you very much.
Maybe going along the quayside.
Yes, I know what you mean, yes, precisely. Councillor Minkus?
Correct me if I'm part of this meeting, but
I will do.
I attended the round meeting on Thursday, and I'm chatting. What is being requested, if possible, would it come out of this Sittingbourne area committee year, is outside the station, that's the main station, where you've sort of got the traffic lights and the crossing, a tourist board put up. I think people are getting off the train or whatever, or off the bus, to notify people where the attractions are. That was a proposal of mine. This is the right committee to bring it up.
It was as good as any committee. I've raised this already. I hope I'm speaking loud enough for everyone. I raised this at the Town Centre Working Group, and I met with Andy from Sustrans on that very subject. I was told that whatever was put up would have to be on a similar design that we already have on the other side of the road. So there's a degree of continuity. Andy suggested that rather than just maps, we include QR codes, so that not only will it give you directions to the place, it will give some information. I've raised this on several times. We may also have a chance of getting something inside the station, but it's getting in touch with the correct owners, because I think South Eastern lease it from Network Rail. It's one of those things. But it has been raised with Sustrains, and I'm doing work with Therese Hammond at the moment on a festival, and it's something that we have looked at. And as an aside on this subject, I also raised the fact that there's no bins on the apron, and I was told it's a security issue, although plenty of stations just have see-through bags. The solid bins were taken out during the high terrorist alerts because any devices could be hidden in them. So that's why we lost the bins in front of stations. But it has been raised, and I will continue to raise that, because you're right, we have a great deal of attractions within a mile of the station, and nothing, not like Canterbury, nothing telling you where to go as soon as you come out of the station. It's a good point. Well made, Councillor. Thank you very much. Anyone else under? Well, you've had your bit, Jackie. Go on. You have to be really quick though.
2 points. It's two places where buses have to turn around. They've got having a lot of difficulty doing that. One's at the end, Newman Drive and Yates Drive, and the other one is right at the end of Kemsley.
Oh, I know the ones. Yeah.
Yeah. Could some just look at that and see, because I'm being concerned there could be a crash on either of them.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you, Jackie. That has been noted by Janet, and I will chase that up to the next meeting.
Yeah.
If you can remember. Thank you. Right, now this is part of our main, I know we've got the wonderful Mark here with a presentation on rail. Wonderful. But this is the meat of this meeting, given that the funding round is coming up now. We have a work plan going forward, which is agenda item 9. And in this item, we need to discuss how we allocate our funds going. Am I speaking loud enough for everyone? Can everyone hear me? I've got no confused faces at the moment, thank you. So we need to discuss and agree the priorities and ambitions for 22-23 to sections 3.1 and 3.2. We need to discuss and agree the criteria which any bids for funding will need to meet 3.2 to 3.5. As we pointed out at the meeting back in February, some very worthwhile projects, because they lacked some of the flags that we'd attached to the criteria, such as Satida and New Leaf, didn't get the points they deserved because they didn't have all the buzzwords in them that some of the others did. So that's an important thing to consider. And we also need to discuss and agree what publicity should take place to promote the funding scheme. In the past, there have been discussions over whether it's put on public forums, whether we approach people. So we need to discuss agenda item 9. And I also need to make members aware that the funding available has been reduced from 44,000 this year down to 37,000 as a heads up. I've spoken to the paper. I hope I've introduced it well enough. You should have all read the paper prior to the meeting. I know you've all read the paper, I'm just saying it. And can I have any questions or points on the various sections of this paper? I'm looking stern. Thank you, Councillor Dender.
Yeah, no discussion really. I was just, you've given us 3 options.
Yep.
The second one, the limited one.
Limited publicity.
Email any local organisations that make maps in use. I mean, I remember last year, the press release, certainly press that would get loads of applications from all over the place.
And obviously,
I think what we all here know, the kind of organisations with press.
thank you, Councillor Dender. I think that was one of the initial discussion points when the area committees were first launched, that there would be nothing more than a glorified funding pot that went beyond what the members had available. I think you're right, I think we need to do a limited scope on that to 3.6. This is for recommendation. Do we vote on this? Thank you, Bennett. Right, so as Councillor Dennis raised the publicity, which is 3.6, and how far we publicise, then I'm pretty much thinking along the same lines as Councillor Dennis. As members, we know the organisations within our various wards that may be deserving of funding, and generally I don't just stick something up on Facebook. I will email some of the organisations that I represent and say funding applications are now open. So can we have a proposer and a seconder on the bullet point, limited publicity, email and local organisations? Is there a proposer? Councillor Dennis, seconder, Councillor Winkler. You second that? And so therefore we need members to vote on that. Are we happy that we are going to use limited publicity rather than full scale publicity? Are you speaking or voting, Councillor?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to it briefly if I may.
Thank you,
I
Councillor.
do have a concern that whilst we all know routes within our areas and so on, we may inadvertently exclude or.
There is that.
Depends on the camera.
I take on board, we all know our areas very, very well.
Yeah.
But I just wouldn't want to put it in a disadvantage because like you were saying on those, those that we know.
Thank you, Kim. It's a point well made. There may well be 2 rounds as there were last year, in which case, I think we did last year, we decided amongst ourselves. I think personally speaking, and everyone's point is valid, I think the more limited way with limited publicity rather than great big splurges, because unfortunately what I've seen, I know I've only been a councillor for 3 years, I do tend to see the same faces rocking up. And rightly or wrongly, they're all charities, they're all looking for funding, and they're all deserving. But you make a very good point. Councillor Daniel, do you want to come back?
Yes, just to be chair, just answering Councillor Gibson, a suggestion. I was going to say that we create a database, we create a list available to all councillors, and we add to that list. Now, I hesitate to put more work on the office circle, but quite frankly, I think having your list like that is less work than having 2,000 applications through Facebook. You know.
We do, yeah. Charlotte's going to come back in a minute.
Just to come back to that. So obviously, you're discussing the area committee funding at the moment, but as you're aware, you also have your members' funding, and that is widely publicised. We do have a database of all applicants in the past and anybody that's come there. So it's quite easy within that database to potentially pull off a list of if we say we feel that we're missing, we want to support an organisation such as, because we used the domestic abuse ones earlier, like New Link or Satida, we can say these are the ones that apply for that type of funding and be able to direct the committee that way, if that would help.
Are you saying we could, sorry, are you saying we could submit a name to that list for you to put on the list without giving them a...
Well, the database holds any applicant, so it's not about a list of any organisation out there, but because that scheme is widely publicised, we obviously get lots of approaches. Sometimes a member might not support it, but we could obviously, if it was supporting the work of this committee or another area committee, we could signpost it.
I mean, I'm chairman of the local children's partnership group, so I've got to list that on, applying for Reconnect and all those sorts of things.
Thank you, Councillor Linda. And as James pointed out, we had since the start of the area committee, we've been creating a database of members as well, organisations. So are we happy to vote on that specific proposal by Councillor Dendar, seconded by Councillor Winkler? So we have to vote on that, members. Anyone agree? Anyone who agrees with Councillor Dendar's proposal? Thank you, Councillor Dennis. Thank you, members. What we do also need to discuss and vote on, I believe, although it's a recommendation, but I think we still need to vote on it, are our priorities. As you can see in 3.2, there are a few ideas that have been put forward and that Councillor Denner and I discussed at a previous, in our chairman's meeting. So, for instance, we've already mentioned the radio scheme. but I believe there's some funding for it, isn't there? There wasn't the CSP.
Yeah, there has been some funding put forward towards it.
Yeah.
But obviously, the more funding that can go,
Yeah.
the more enhanced the scheme is.
And bear in mind, this Safer Together scheme is a chargeable service to businesses. And I know there's a sliding scale, I believe, from charities, small businesses, larger businesses. So there may be something an individual member may want to support with a specific organisation or charity within town. So obviously at 3.2, you have some of these ideas. Obviously, we've already talked about active travel and the Great Eastall Shop feasibility programme that I know Councillor Hall will be very well interested in. So these are the criteria and the proposals that we have. We either look at some of the proposals from Swale Borough Council. We set the criteria based on priority 2 or priority 3. I don't think there's a problem in us considering some of these as well as the others, is there, per se, when it comes to recommendations? No, because I think the Great Eastall problem is a well-documented problem, and I think is worthy of support on a personal level anyway, having spoken with some people who live out there.
Chair, just,
Councillor Dindon, yes?
Are we voting simply that these will be considered?
We need to vote on what our priorities are, according to the recommendations. Now, we
These have to go through the bidding process. just
yes,
like
oh,
everyone
everyone, yes, everyone would have to vote on it.
Yeah, can I just explain? So you can decide this evening whether you want to include any or all of these, or you may even want to add to this yourself. There may be other schemes you wish to add to this yourself, but we would need to double check with heads of service to make sure that there were no issues of any ones that are added, such as officer capacity issues. So one of the committee this evening have agreed their priority and ambitions list. What would happen then is that a member would want to take one of them on to put a proposal together, work with the head of service to put the proposal together. I could provide a bid form for that, submit the bid form, and it would need to be in by the 1st of August, and then it would go through the assessment process and the scoring process and so on to come back to the September meeting. So that would run, if you're agreeing to have both bids, member bids and external bids, they would all be considered together and come back to the September meeting. Where the criteria fit in, which is on 3.3, is on what this will be, on what they will be judged. So the recommendation is that they carry on from last year, which is that they have a positive impact on appearance, environment and facilities in the Sittingbourne area. If you want to change that, then we can vote about having something that would include something like a sativa. So maybe we would want to tweak those criteria, but that would then be put into the guidance notes for people when they are applying, putting in a bid, so they know what criteria they need to write their bids towards. Does that answer the question?
Yes, I was just getting that these won't have any additional priority than other external bids that go through.
There'll be the same process. And just because you may vote on them tonight doesn't necessarily mean that they will all come back in September. You know, it may be that only a couple of them come back. But these are the things that at the moment you feel are priorities for this area, and that as a committee you would be willing to be included in the bid process.
Thank you, Councillor Dindon. Councillor Winters?
I was going to propose the active travel infrastructure improvements. This is something which we
It's on the it's on.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
I stand corrected.
Councillor Dindon, Councillor Winters, they would have been both perfectly good points, but as Adrian has said, there now is funding for that coming from the government, so we may hold back on this to see what we can get if you see, rather than rather than get ahead of ourselves. Bear in mind that we're not making a decision tonight in any funding. Councillor Rolls.
Secretary, in the documentation, is there any evidence of match funding? Is there a requirement of match funding?
No, not at all. Councillor Hall.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the items, active travel, Great Falls, the only one that shows any figures, 5 to 86 days.
Yep.
Is that going to be used self-travelers? What was that figure?
I spoke with Janet on this.
Yeah, I think we've got the initial quote to do that initial piece of work, so that is the working estimate to do that next stage.
I was speaking to Kieran with Matthew recently.
Yeah, it was the clearing that was provided that figure.
Thank you.
Thank you, members. Yeah, obviously, we can, as Janet has said, we can use the same criteria we had last year, but there were concerns that it marked down some that were making social impact because they weren't as far outreaching. And you also have priority 2, priority 3 to consider on page 27, which I suppose priority 3 could possibly cover Cetada and New Leaf and other such organisations. So on the recommendations,
Chair, if I could just point out
Councillor Linder.
3.4.
Mhm.
It was noticed that 3.4, which I think is very important. Ensure that council plays a proactive role in reducing crime and antisocial behaviour, including through the modernisation of CCTV. That's an important.
Yes.
All that has been done.
The what?
The CCTV consultant has been upgraded.
Yep. It has been upgraded. I think where this is coming from is that there is, certainly within Milton, and I can only speak from my own personal experience in Milton, there is a swell of support to have CCTV reinstalled. It was taken out and we are working, but we do have to provide the data that proves that, as you said earlier on roads. So the recommendations, we need to discuss and agree. We've already done the publishing one, haven't we?
Yeah.
Discuss and agree the priorities and ambitions, and we need to discuss and agree the criteria. So we don't have to vote on the proposals under 3.2. I think the first two on the active travel can be maybe put to bed for a little while, having listened to Adrian. The radio schemes, I know has part funding already now. The closing gates for the new car park at Milton Green Country Park have to put the trustee hat on here. We think we're up to about 15 grand, aren't we, Linda, on the cost?
There was 75,000 in the reserve, 40,000 in the budget for tarmacking.
Yes. Well, I think
I've got to-
Graham was going away to discuss that, so I think that one could be parked for now. I think Graham was going to go back and discuss at the last MCCP meeting.
Some suggested that the budget reserve would be reduced to cover all that
Yeah,
expenditure, and there wasn't any money left for the
yes,
going.
indeed. Public toilet refurbishments, we've left it in there, but I'm not sure as an area committee with the funds we have, there's not much we can do on that. I know there's still some discussion over the forum.
Yeah.
Public toilets, isn't there? I don't think they can afford.
There is some budget to do.
Yeah, but I don't think they can afford to knock it down and start again anymore, can they? Which was the original idea. And the radio schemes we've already spoke about. Of all those proposals, the one I would like to leave in with members' agreement would be the Great Eastall feasibility study. Simply because I think the residents of Great Eastall were given a bum deal on that, to be honest, when they were promised a shop and it never arrived. Would anyone like to propose and second that we park all the other items in 3.2 apart from the Great Eastall? Who would like to propose that? Councillor Gibson, seconder. Councillor Rolls. Members, can we have a vote on that proposal? Who's for that proposal? Thank you, members. Brilliant.
For the government, so we only need one.
Yes, and this, yes, yeah. There's not so we can't bring them back at a later date, but going forward, yeah. And on the criteria, do members want to change the criteria to make them a bit more all-encompassing? To allow people like Sittingbourne and New Leaf to be marked higher up? Have we got anyone who would like to speak to that? We discussed it in February, if members remember, when we were doing the second tranche of funding, and we would like to see organisations such as New Leaf get marked higher, but do we want to therefore change that criteria? Because at the moment, it's predominantly about improving the appearance and positive impact on the well-being of residents in the Sittingbourne area. Now, do we want to expand that to include those who provide social support as well, such as the domestic abuse support and organisations such as that? Councillor Winkless.
Yes, I think that would be very good avenue to go down. Support.
Councillor, would you like to word something appropriately to add to our criteria and then find a seconder?
What actions exactly are we talking about in that?
Adding to the criteria for big funding.
Yes, but then the social aspect. What particular tasks are you looking at to implement to make that effective?
Yes, thank you, John.
Yeah. So obviously with last year's funding round, it was quite difficult because the criteria is sort of the appearance, environment and facility. So it's very much about physical improvement projects. What we do is get quite a lot of approach, as you well know, Councillor Whelan, on mental health, domestic abuse. We've got obviously the cost of living crisis now, and so organisations such as that help with debt support and things like that wouldn't really meet the funding criteria for the area committee, because any sort of physical improvement, because of the last year's criteria, would automatically score higher and therefore get recommended for approval of funding. So if we included the positive impact to the well-being of residents as one of the criteria, that would just give a physical project equal weighting to a more, say, like social project such as a mental health project or a debt advice service that would also benefit the residents of Sittingbourne. But obviously that's a one-to-one service rather than something that everyone can see. And
it's just all these things, I applaud all that, and I know it's been under discussion already, but it's largely down to people being involved, and salaries are expensive, and it would wipe out 34,000 without funding. With one quarter, two people involved. I just don't think we can make an impact when the costs are so high. Agreed in principle, we should support it, but it would only be words.
Thank you, Councillor William. I think New Leaf's bid last year was around, one of them was only £3,000. They're not looking. I'm not looking at employing a full-time professional for a whole year. What I think we could add is that we would give credence to social support services where they, like with New Leaf, they had a very time-limited project that they were going to do. They would employ someone for, I think, 15 hours a week it was, and it was for a very set time. So that is, I'd just like to add that criteria. As a committee, we can decide on what we fund, and if someone comes in and says, can I have all 37,000, well, we go, no. I appreciate where you're coming from, and professionals are expensive and they deserve the money they get. But I think if we expand the criteria slightly to include some of these social support services, we can, people like New Leaf on their very limited bid would be marked somewhat higher and therefore would have got more of the money that they were asking for. That was my suggestion. Thank you, Councillor Dender.
Thank you, Chair. So I was just listening to what Charlotte said. I think she was almost saying that the positive impact to the well-being of residents is actually good enough. It's just not in the wrong. It's in the wrong place. It should be further up the priority list. I mean, the sentence at the end is they suggest the area which we may wish to consider adding things should have a positive impact. Okay, that's got to be rephrased to say it is. We should. make up the criteria, it's the wording, I think.
Janet?
The other thing, if I may, is the word strikes me about, because we're talking about food banks, we're talking about Newlink, we're talking about, obviously, the things we can support them on are logistics. That's the word, the short term, as you said.
Yeah.
It's their planning and logistics
Mhm.
for their operation is where we can support them.
Yeah.
Just a thought on word.
Janet, did you want to come back on that?
It was just really, not wishing to put words in anybody's mouth, to tweak that so as to taking on board the well-being aspect, that that the criteria could read something along the lines of bids to have a positive impact on the appearance, environment, facilities and well-being of residents. Just
Yeah,
very simple.
bring it up to the main criteria.
So, yeah.
Thank you, Janet. Okay, having had that, brief, Councillor Winkler, yes.
You want to put the,
Councillor Winkler, we think we may have solved the problem with a little bit of rewording.
We've got four words at the very.
it's okay, if you can.
What would you like to say, Councillor Winkler? I'm prepared to listen.
Say improve social inclusion, presentation.
Street, you know what I mean?
Sorry, now,
Yeah, Tim, read it out. Read it out in your booming voice.
improve social inclusion by consideration being given to organisations that provide specific support services to those with wider needs.
That be included, Janet?
Could let me have, I'll write that quickly.
No, no,
Let me
but
have
I'm
that.
just, I mean, that's what Tony's got here. So improve social inclusion by consideration being given to organisations that provide specific support services to those with wider needs.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson, Councillor Winkler. I don't think we need to propose and second that. I think we could just ask members to vote on that being included within the criteria. Am I correct?
We can do, yes. What would you, what about
With the
the,
amendment.
is that replacing what you had last year? Be replaced?
No, I think that could be an addition. Personally, I'm happy with that being an addition. Members, are you happy to have that addendum added into the criteria?
Yeah.
Can I see a show of hands, please, to confirm that? Brilliant. Fantastic stuff.
Would you let me have that word?
No.
Now, I believe have we approached all, done all the recommendations?
Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you, members. Now, I'm going to take chairman's prerogative here, and I don't care who disagrees with me. I'm allowed to do that. I'm going to bring agenda item 12 forward. My apologies, Mark. And I would like to have Jodie speak on Ellie's Angels, and you will see why I have jigged things around.
Could I just ask Billy, could you please start sharing the presentation?
No, I'll be there. Could I walk around and have a look?
Is that right?
No, yeah, the presentation.
Yes, it would.
That's what I mean.
Thank you very much, Billy.
Hello, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Hall, for the invitation this evening. It's an honour to stand and speak in front of all of you, and thank you for your time and consideration. Can you all hear me okay? Yes. So we're here this evening to speak about Ellie's Angels. So who was Ellie? Ellie was a local girl with a very brave story. She was like so many teenagers in that she struggled with her mental health and anxiety. And there are many contributing factors. Her life did take its toll on her and she became quite unhappy. She suffered with the headaches, tummy aches, sleepless nights, and she was irritable and sad most of the time. Next slide, please.
Next slide, please, Billy.
Back one.
Go back one.
That's it. So one day, Ellie decided that she'd had enough of feeling like that, and she found an inner strength. And she sought the help of the local healthcare services, or at least she tried. We got in touch with Scott Jones, the community psychiatric nurse, and Ellie began to talk with him regularly. She also accessed children's talking therapies, but it was a long 12 weeks before she could talk with anybody there. This felt like a lifetime to a very desperate Ellie, However, she was determined to start her recovery straight away. So she began to use some self-help methods. She began to log her thoughts and her feelings in a journal every day, and she wrote those and repeated daily affirmations, and she scored her well-being in an attempt to rewire her mind and to think positively. She'd also meditate and use healing crystals, mindfulness techniques to clear her mind and help her feel calm and relaxed. And she began eating healthy and exercising too. And over several months, Ellie became the best version of herself she could be. Her positive energy really shone through. Ellie was so happy, confident and healthy, and she really loved life and herself once more. It was a beautiful transformation. Ellie was determined to make sure that others would feel that way too. And it was agreed that she no longer needed the support of Scott or the mental health team, unless she would call them when she felt she needed them in the future. Then, in November 2020, Ellie was sadly taken from us when she was hit by a car whilst out jogging. She suffered traumatic brain injuries and she died 3 days later at King's College Hospital. Losing Ellie left a huge gap in all of our lives. Excuse me. Such a special daughter, sister, grandchild, and friend to so many, but taken from us so soon. Just as Ellie was so positive and successful in changing her life, we wondered how her inspirational and brave achievements could be shared to others to help them and leave a legacy in Ellie's name. So after some time, as any grieving mother does, I searched for comfort by looking through all of her things. As a creative young lady, she had left a variety of media which really expressed her journey. Her paintings, poems, her journals, and her social media posts too. And it was so clear to see the journey that Ellie had taken, and so I began to piece it all together. The healthcare team and I agreed that we should use Ellie's story to help other young people. We hope that by telling Ellie's story in a style and format that is familiar to young people, that it will really resonate with them, and that it will give them hope and show them that there's always a choice. And so I created a video using Ellie's own posts, pictures and journal inserts, and I made it in the style of an Instagram, Snapchat style story to get their attention. And so our campaign began. Slide 3, please. And you can click play.
Speak up a little bit.
Go back and have a sound on that, please.
Can you try and increase the sound?
Or share sound.
Share sound.
I'm not sure how I can, Janet.
So Billy, sorry?
I, it seems to be turned up on my computer, but I'm not too sure how to get it louder.
Have you got any sound at all, Billy?
No, I can't hear any sound.
Um,
Was it like, yeah.
If you wouldn't mind, thank you.
Can we just plug that in straight to there or just play it for the
You'd
repair?
only be able to put it together, I'm afraid. That's the video as well. The plate screen is empty. Two days and those values on the show.
Ellie was like many teenage girls. She struggled with the pressures of today's society. She was bullied, had a low self-esteem, and battled with anxiety. But she was strong, she was brave, and she chose to turn her life around. Ellie chose happily, and so can you. They've been everything, and just like magic can make the whole world sing. That look in your eyes, and the joy it brings when I hold you and you hold me.
I know we're not where we used to be, but we carry so much history. Put up my sails, and I rode the wind that let me hear you. I do it all again. And I'll always be the same. Feelings go, change will never fade away. You're far from home, this hides no away. Feels right there inside. When you need solution, look to the stars. As if you don't know where I'm headed, follow your heart. And that's how I guide you, and right beside you. Like a lamp of your memory, and just like a canvas, to be so late. We may take a love, but never fade. And that's how I guide you, until we are trying to remember the dark days. Love is a compass. I see you love when I'm in my dreams. And just like a child full of possibilities, I can't help but smile. Everyone does what they love, 'cause I know I've been there before. I know we will always be the same. Feelings do change, they never fade away. When you're far from home, it's hard to look away, but it's right there inside. You need to reach, check out your life. If you don't know where you're headed, just hold on tight. It lasts not guide you, 'cause I'm right here beside you. You never me. And just like a compass that leads the way, we meet in the love, love never fade. It lasts not guide you, don't tell me you try to. Remember all the darker days. Love is a compass.
Next slide, please, Billy. Thank you. So, we formed a working group of Ellie's friends and siblings, and we called them Ellie's Angels. There they are, children and young people of Swale. We meet regularly to discuss ideas and we find innovative ways for the young generation to manage their health and well-being and to access support in a way that works for them. By listening to our young members, we're implementing strategies that help them to look after their own mental health in many of the ways that Ellie did. And most importantly, offer support and guidance in a way that they are familiar with. Our group of Ellie's Angels are so passionate about making a change in the way that mental health support is offered and determined to remove the stigma around it. We are proud to say that Ellie's Angels is a charity whose members are mostly young people. But we also have an impressive board of trustees and directors, including 2 doctors and a mental health nurse. It was clear from listening to our angels that mental health support wasn't really being offered in a way that they were comfortable with, and most importantly, it didn't meet their needs. So we asked what they would like to see or have access to. It was then decided that they wanted a tool that not only offered self-help methods and ways to encourage a positive mindset, but also provided one place to seek a diverse range of supportive organisations that can offer the support at the click of a button. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. No waiting weeks for an appointment to speak to somebody. They wanted this in the form of an app. So over the following months, we presented Ellie's story to many organisations within KCC, the NHS, CCG, including Children's Integrated Services, in a bid to make a change. It was then that we were introduced to the Kent and Medway Suicide Prevention Team and supported with an application for a Saving Lives Innovation Fund. We were successful in our bid and awarded £25,000, and this now made the creation of our app a possibility. And so we have created Better You. Slide 5.
Should try and time this at the
Slide,
same
next
time.
slide, please, Billy.
We'll try and play it always at the same time.
The social media is full of feeling, anxiety, low self-esteem.
They've found the wrong slide, the wrong video in there.
Okay.
It's a shame, you can't really hear this. This is the BBC interview on the politics show with Marcella Whittingdale and Sir Roger Gale. Unless you can hear this.
Can I suggest you send links?
We'll send links to
And
everyone.
then, through Council Hall,
Yeah.
to send to all the members of the committee, then we can.
If it can't be, if the technical team can't play
No,
the sound,
yeah, I appreciate
it's
that.
a shame because it's quite
Yeah, thanks.
important.
I think it's important for all members to hear it, so
I think so, yeah.
If you don't mind adjourning for a couple of minutes, I can attempt to do it. I'm not sure it will work, but I can attempt to do it sharing from this screen. Depends.
I am happy, I am personally, as long as other members are happy.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, let me.
I've got it on USB, ready to play in case this sort of thing happens, it's easier.
Um,
And you like to do that?
let me just try. I have got,
Yeah.
got it saved on here, so let me just try.
While we're just looking there, by just a second, the video you saw there was actually recorded by our agents. We went to a studio, and we were one of the first people to have permission from both Disney and Warfronts to reproduce one of their songs without various royalties and bits and pieces. Obviously, they don't profit from it, but it was a full song to Ellie, it was a full song to us. And we went to one of the Sittingbourne studios over by the Euroleague and spent a day with the team there and the young people from those agents. And that song was the instrument was played by them, the vocals were sung by them, and then that was placed over the top of the original video that Jamie put together in a way that resonates with young people in a sort of a TikTok, Instagram point of view, comes across to them in a way that they enjoy and understand.
It's loading very slowly.
It's quite a huge file, when I sent it
Yes.
across, I sort of amalgamated it into a PowerPoint, so there wasn't too many files. BBC interview that we're hopefully going to show you is one of the few we did with BBC, ITV. Sir Roger Gale joined us with this one with
Marcella and the BBC politics show on Sunday. Then Sittingbourne and the ITV team.
Like so many young people.
There we go. That sounds good. I'll get that out of the way. So this is BBC.
Sorry, Jenny, I think I've managed to get it working. Do you want me to start playing it?
Yes, please. This is the, which slide is this? Oh, sorry, this is slide.
Slide 5. There's a video to play.
Slide 5 and play video.
Like so many young people, Ellie Payne struggled with the pressures of being a teenager. Her social media was full of her feelings about being bullied, her anxiety, low self-esteem and negative body image. But then she started exploring ways to improve her mental health, and the results were life-changing.
Her struggles were really great, but you know, she found ways to manage her mental health.
In November 2020, Ellie was hit by a car while she was out jogging near Sittingbourne and later died in hospital. As a way of celebrating how Ellie transformed her mental health before her death, her family and friends have created an app so other young people can try the methods that helped Ellie so much. Practical ideas like journaling and goal setting, which helped Ellie work through her feelings and see life in a much more positive way, as well as links to organisations which can offer support.
We're so proud of it because it is Ellie's legacy, and I think all the things that helped her turn her life around are going to be the things that are going to help somebody else. So, you know, it's not about Ellie's tragic death, it's about her very brave choice to really live. And, you know, if it can save just one person, then it's absolutely done what we needed to do.
It's there whenever they want to press the button. They don't have to wait for someone to be available. They don't have to wait to try and find a quiet place to make that call. It's there ready for them.
The Better You app launched this week. Pretty much anyone with a smartphone can download it for free. Some of Ellie's closest friends who've had to deal with so much since her death helped develop it. They say it was crucial the app is appealing to young people.
Because it's made by young people for young people. It kind of gets across everything we wanted to get across. This app really allows you to just take a moment to step away from a busy world, a scary world sometimes. Just take a moment to sit down and really just let it all out and just write down all your feelings and thoughts.
You're on your phone and it's there. You don't have to go to reach out, you don't have to pick up the phone and call someone. It's just there, and it's always there 24/7, which a lot of other mental health support isn't.
I think it's been such a great project to work on in Ellie's memory, and I think it's really, I saw how these methods helped her, and I think if it can help even one more person, then I think it's been worth doing.
The Better You app's based on techniques Ellie used while she was waiting 12 weeks to get help from children's talking therapies. Kent and Medway CCG say demand for their support is high, and they're working continuously to improve wait times. Scott Jones has been a mental health nurse for 30 years. He says the methods the app's based on really do help change young people's mindsets.
Today's social media, the pressures of the schools, is so immense that it's overwhelming for our young people, and they need support now, or it will become a catastrophe. If you don't have your mental health, you've got nothing.
Ellie's mum and stepdad say this is just the beginning, but they're already so proud the process Ellie used to turn her life around is now a template to help other teenagers thrive. Marcella Whittingdale, BBC South East Today, Sittingbourne.
Thank you so much. Next slide, please, Billy. So, Better You launched in April 22 and has already received an impressive level of downloads, which we continue to see grow daily. It's a free app which contains no adverts. We're thrilled that it has been recognised and promoted by so many of those working in partnership with Young People Services. The funding awarded has enabled us to provide a platform that young people are familiar with, and most importantly, a place where the support options are collated in a way that makes it easy for the user to access support that they need in one place in a way that they want to. Slide 7, please.
Next slide, please.
So the funding enabled us to provide the foundations of the features that our young people really desired. As you can see on the screen, you have 3 screenshots there. One being the affirmations and aims for the day. The second being part of the journaling feature. And the third there being a shot of some of the organisations and the signposting of supporting organisations to go to there. But there are still many other enhancements identified by our angels that would make this support tool even better for their generation. And so this is where our work now continues. There are a further 32 features that our young ambassadors and medical consultant trustees feel would benefit the users. To include all of these, we need to raise a further £80,000. Our fundraising will enhance Better You and its features and will be used to ensure that it continues to meet the needs of its generation. Here's what the angels have to say. If you could, slide 8, please.
Next slide, please.
Ellie's Angels is a charity formed by a group of family and friends mainly focused on creating positive change in the community, especially around youth mental health and those kind of issues.
What makes Ellie's Angels different is that we have a lot of youth mental health ambassadors, which means that we have a young people's perspective within all the work that we do. So, because we're young people, we understand what young people need and what would help them and what would help support their mental health. So when we go to charity meetings, we brainstorm what really would help young people, and I think that really makes Ellie's Angels different.
Better You is an app that we designed as young people in the memory of Ellie. It contains lots of great features that Ellie herself used and that we all love and find so helpful. Some of the features include journaling and daily affirmations. There is also lots of links and signposting to other charities that can be helpful.
The Better You app offers a diverse range of supportive organisations which you can access wherever, whenever you need it.
The app is beneficial for younger children because it's easily accessible on the phone, and I feel like they have a lot of techniques that are good for younger children. Well, my favourite feature is the journaling section because you can add pictures and log how you're feeling every day, and you can see like patterns when you're feeling happy and sad.
Ellie's Angels is a charity whose members are mostly young people. Together, we are trying to find ways to help inspire our generation find ways that work for them. Better You is a platform that provides just that.
So there are young ambassadors. Slide 9, please. So we know that there will always be so much more work needed when it comes to supporting our young people. We are in a mental health pandemic and the statistics of suicide are climbing at an alarming rate. We want to continue to provide better services for our future generation and to continue to work alongside the healthcare and education sectors to make a difference. We will continue to raise funds to further develop and support this app, to continue to build upon its features and provide a platform that continues to meet the needs of its generation. We'll continue to highlight the mental health support needed for our young people and to normalise it in any way that we can. Our future aims are to create a primary version and also an SEN version. We hope that Ellie's story will create an awareness of mental health support needs and will encourage schools to include regular discussions about mental health in their curriculum. We hope that by seeing a real life case, that it will normalise mental health for those young people. This campaign isn't about Ellie's tragic death, it is about her very brave choice to re-live. We hope that Ellie's story will help so many others, and we hope that it may even save some lives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joe. Very good presentation. And I know it was difficult for some of us to hear. And so I would, if the presentation could be shared with James, he can share it to all of us. Thank you, members, and thank you for your attention during that piece. If you feel you need to go, then feel free to move on. I know you've had to wait quite a while. Yes, feel free to hand out. I did speak with Councillor Hall on this. We had a meeting in advance, so I have been private. Councillor Hall.
Yeah, I feel very privileged to have met Jodie Foster. Very sad story, and such a brave lady. You know, losing her daughter's a devastating thing. And she's carried on, she's formed Ellie's Angels, you know, and it's a great event for you right now, and I wish you every success and best of luck. And I hope we get support from her members. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor, and I concur. Jodie, are you intending to leave now?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know you've had to wait a long while, which is why I kind of moved things around for you. Our next presentation is from Mark, so we've got some handouts, some leaflets, we're happy to receive them, and then Mark will give a presentation on the radar.
Just there is a QR code on there if you want to be able to access and have a look at the app yourselves.
Thank you very much. I'm all over QR.
Billy, could you get the next presentation ready? We're doing that item next.
Oh, I've got that. Otherwise I've got it. Oh, cooking, I didn't realise it was just sat here. Sitting out the back. My daughter was very right for ringing, so one of them. She would drop some onions and that.
Right, hi, sorry, can't really follow that, can I? I'd like to tell you about Red Bell Charters, lots of friends in the room, so I know that lots of you know about Red Bell already, but let me whisk through our presentation and then we'll take answers. Our managing director Gareth has been patiently waiting up there. He couldn't get here because of the train strike, apologies for that. Okay, so Bill, if you could rattle through the slides about every 5 seconds, please. So Raybell was built in 1920 in Wilson Packham Yard. Next slide, please, Billy. Oh, thank you. Hooray! That was launching day, August 1920. A very lovely day. Everyone's got the hats on and the flags are out, and that is the launch of Raybell. Next slide, please, Billy. There she's in service sometime in the 20s. That's it up in Woodbridge, unloading. That's how most of her life was spent, carrying grain from Ipswich to London. Next slide, please, Billy. And that is us bringing her back up Milton Creek in September 2019 in anticipation of a lovely offer by Swell Council to have us at the Lloyd Wharf. Just a few hundred yards from where she was built. Next slide, please, Billy. This is the drone shot. Next slide, please, Billy. Billy here. This was a... Okay.
Go back, Bonnie.
No, it's all right. Don't worry. We're cracking on. This is a dry dock that was gifted us to us by the Westmoreland Trust. We had to raise it from Lower Halstow. We brought it up Milton Creek on the 10th of March 2020, a significant date, just as it all kicked off, and we cleared it out during June, ready for putting Raybell in. Next slide, please, William. In July of 20, we brought in the first sail cargo to Milton Creek for 50 years. It was a token cargo, it was in a rowing boat. We hired the Dawn to bring goods from our sister ship, the Gallant, which had come from the Caribbean into Ramsgate, and then the Dawn brought it round to the mouth of the Swale, and then the Dawn's barge boat brought it right up. So we actually did the delivery of sail cargo right to the wharf here. Next slide, please, Billy. There she is in the dry dock, and there we are fitting the gates onto the dry dock to make the whole thing float so we can start work on her. Next slide, please, Billy. Gone back one, I'm afraid. Hooray! There's the mayor. Where was the mayor at the time? Turning bits of the old Westmoreland into planters, which we've decorated the site with. Next slide, please. This is one of our young apprentices. All through the programme of what we've been trying to do with Raybell. Sorry, I didn't explain the 3 things we went to do with Raybell, which is restore Raybell, bring it back to use for sail cargo use, to develop the wharf at Lloyd Wharf, and to develop a return to sail cargo, and I forgot the third one, I do apologise. This is Sam, he came to help us, and there he is using a magnetic drill to drill steel plates which are used for the reconstruction of the bow. Next slide, please, Billy. This is Ruben, our apprentice. We took him on for a year. He was very useful. He already had some metalworking skills. Now he has barge building skills. Next slide, please, Billy. There's another councillor, James Hunt, and Colin, who's an ex-Lloyd's broker. He's retired and they've been cleaning up this foxhole hatch. Next slide, please, Billy. I wanted to stress the role of volunteers because we've got 12 absolutely fantastic volunteers, generally all retired men. All bring a very wide range of skills. We have submariners, we have ex-pilots, we have Lloyd's brokers, we have kitchen installers, we have painters and decorators. Fabulous team of people working on Raybell. This is John. He's in his 80s now. There he is, stripping off the comb, the lead flashing around the combing. Next slide, please, Billy. It's a group being tuitioned in how to mill deck timbers. Next slide, please, Billy. This is Ryan. He comes from Sheppey. He's trying to find out what he wants to do with his life, and he's now decided, after working with us on Raybell, he's going to start a carpentry course in Canterbury next year. Next slide, please, Billy. There's a gang of the chaps. We registered men's shed. So we get referrals from a mental health team, and we got £1,200 worth of power tools from Kent University, who are doing research into the role of men's sheds. Next slide, please, Billy. There's the motley crew having lunch. That's the main social event. We all do our own thing, and then we all get together and have lunch. Next slide, please, Billy. We also been doing the history of Raybell, and we learned that one of our name badges that had been taken off Raybell in 1960 was in a shed in Malvern, so we went and got it, and that's about 7 foot long, and heaven help the person has to clean up the shed afterwards. Next slide, please, Billy. This was the bow construction and the internal construction of the bow. As you can see, it's pretty dramatic woodwork and metalwork. Next, the planks on the outside of that framework will be removed and replaced one by one. Next slide, please, Billy.
Mark, could I just very briefly interrupt? On the previous slide,
yes,
it was our area committee, I believe, that provided the funding for that big piece of timber.
Yes.
Yes, this fellow here.
Yes, actually, you can't see the piece of wood. There are, the stem is in the middle there. That's the new stem. On the left-hand side slightly is a very big piece of wood, which is about 15 years old. And on the right-hand side, there's nothing. And that's because we needed a new piece of wood to fit in there. It was a massive piece of wood, 15 foot tall, about 15 inches square, now all shaped and in position and looking beautiful. Thank you. Next slide, please, Billy. There's new decking going on. That's the new, some of the new decking alongside some of the old decking that we've left. Next slide, please, Billy. This is the 3 layers of planking that goes around the outer wale. That's 3 layers of inch-thick timber. We've spent about £60,000 on timber so far. Next slide, please, Billy. These are some derails that's made by Roger. He's standing at the back. These have been machined to shape to emulate the steel capping you've had around a barge. We can't afford the steel, so we're made out of timber. Next slide, please, Billy. That's the aft deck, which, as you see, all of that decking has been replaced. It's a pretty huge job. You can see the raggedy black stuff is where the pitch has been laid on after the seams have been caulked, all done by volunteers. Next slide, please, Billy. It's just a nice little piece of decorative work. First of decorative parts that are going on. The shipwrights take great pride in making it look, as little tiny features look very, very beautiful. Next slide, please, Billy. That's the school group we had. We've started taking school groups. Hooray, at last. After 2 years of messing about with nothing on that school groups. It was great. That was St. Peter's or Milton Hall School, one of the two. And they came and did all sorts of things. Next slide, please, Billy. These are model barges that they all built as part of the day's experimentation about ships and floating objects. Next slide, please, Billy. We took part in the 1920s Festival last summer, and that was our stall in the High Street. Lovely day. Nice and sunny. Next slide, please, Billy. We're also trying to be friendly with our neighbours, the railway, and we're working closely with them to try and develop a joint offer of barge steam trains. We're very, very friendly with the railway. That's just a fabulous picture of a letters locomotive. Next slide, please, Billy. This was the Kent Field Club, who came to look at the piece of land which we call the meadow. They found 17 species of wild rose, apparently. Amazing. Next slide, please, Billy. We also, going back to the history, this is the grandson and granddaughter of George Sully, who commissioned the barge in 1920. That was the pennant, and the barge was in ownership from 1922 back to 1974, when it was bought by a private individual. But they presented it with the Sully pennant. That would have been a regular sight above the creek in years gone by. Next slide, please, Billy. That's just one of our open days. Our next open day is on the 30th of July. It'd be lovely if you could come and visit us and actually see the wharf, the museum, and the railway itself. Next slide, please, Billy. We also commissioned this piece of work to go in one of the collection of barge paintings that are in the High Street and one of the others up at the High Street. We're very much trying to take a role in Sittingbourne. We hope that Sittingbourne people are going to take ownership of this project. Next slide, please, Billy. We're also taking a role in the environmental situation, and this is the third instance of fly tipping into the creek that we've reported to the Environment Agency. That is normally clear water. Every so often it runs black, and we go and find out who's done it, and we get the police from 999 who have them there, and we take it very seriously, although we are slightly anxious about repercussions that might come. The people who do these things aren't nice people. Next slide, please, Billy. This is the exhibition upstairs in the museum. The museum hasn't actually been populated by the Museum Trust yet, but we're using the space to put our exhibitions in, and this touring exhibition has also been for the library. Next slide, please, Billy. This was members of the Essex RSPB, and they identified a huge number of birds just sitting on the end of the jetty, and we're going to work with them to try and create a bird hide, possibly out of recycled timbers, using parts of the old Westmoreland, so you can actually go and sit on the end there and just view the fabulous range of birds that are actually in the creek. Next slide, please, Billy. We also won £500 from the National Transport Trust. The best part of that was I got to meet Princess Anne. I'm very pleased. Thank you. Next slide, please, Billy. That's it. I'm a bit thrown by the previous presentation, to be honest. So, if you've got any questions, perhaps you ask the presenter to me or Gareth. Mark.
I don't work out how to get there.
Yes, very good question. So, how do you get to Lloyd Hall?
So, which door, how do we go?
Do you know where McDonald's drive-through is?
Yeah.
Right. So you go. I know. So you go as if you're going to McDonald's drive-through. Just before you turn into McDonald's, you turn right behind the back of KFC. You go up a rise, through a very, very tricky gate opening, down past the skate park. Please don't remember where the skate is. And then keep going down to the right, and then you'll come to our gate, which is the Lloyd Hall. You can walk there. If you're coming on the open day, park in the retail park and walk down. Yeah, fine. Thanks for that question.
What's the reason that?
11 till 3, I think. That's the best chance of getting free pizza anyway.
Any other questions, members? Gareth, as our guest this evening, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, well, yes, actually, just to really say a thanks to the welcome that we've had at Sittingbourne. So we were never really sure where we were going to do this barge restoration. We looked around in different places. We thought about doing it in London. The barge at that time, before we got the funding to do the restoration, was up in Essex. And then we came and we spoke with Seoul Borough Council officers and members, and came up with the idea between us that we could maybe bring it back to where Rayvale was first built, and it's been a wonderful decision. It's been a real pleasure to be there. Just to sort of say, looking ahead, Mark's talked about the project so far. Looking ahead, our main funding comes from National Lottery Heritage Fund. Always have to plug that. And it finishes, we're budgeting for that to finish at the end of this year. So we've got some thinking to do about what happens after that. There's always a little bit more you can do on barges. So there is some further restoration work which we would like to do. So we're in the process of seeing if we can get some funding together to carry on into next year. But on those sort of community activities that Mark's talked about as well, we would love to sort of stay and continue and have a presence at Lloyd's Wharf, and the continuing story of Lloyd's Wharf as a place and a destination and a sort of a draw for an attraction for local people going forward. So yeah, we're looking around for the combination of funding which will enable us to sort of carry on doing those open and the school visits, and the volunteering and the bits of sort of combination of the older guy volunteers, but also bringing in the young people who want the work experience and the training as well. So thanks for having us, and we'd like to stay, I suppose, is the sort of short version of that.
Thank you very much, Gareth.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members? Okay, I'd just like to say, I'd like to thank Mark for his forbearance. I knew what the item was that was coming up. It was also important to have a free vote on our criteria, that we had that particular item before someone spoke for possible funding, because it may well have coloured your judgment when you voted on the criteria going forward. Hence my rejigging of the agenda somewhat, and also I didn't want Jodie, given the context of her presentation, I didn't want Jodie waiting here all night and waiting beyond. So thank you for your forbearance, Mark, and I appreciate it's very, very hard to follow such a presentation. I have seen most of this before. I know other members haven't. Thank you, Mark. Thanks very much indeed. And thanks, members. Agenda item 13, I believe Councillor Hall is now approaching this somewhat differently. Councillor Hall.
Yeah, it's not just briefly say what it was anyway. As a police officer who lives in my ward, a very lovely young man, his name's Richard Greenberg. His dad's got Parkinson's disease, yeah, and it's made him aware of that sort of illness, yeah. So what he's going to do, he's going to walk from from the Big Ben in London all the way to the Eiffel Tower in Paris. It's a remarkable feat. So he's came to me and asked me if there's any way that School Board of Pension would help the charity in any way for the mileage he's told to do. That's basically what it was, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. So he was due to speak today, but he was working, I believe.
Yeah, he was on duty, yeah.
He was on duty today.
Unfortunately, he did want to come, yeah.
And Councillor Hall, if you would like to flesh that out a bit, add a bit more context to it, we can share that with members of the group.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, members, and thank you, members of the public. I know it's been a bit of a long one tonight, but it's good to see you all here. Oh, yes, I did move that, didn't I? I didn't want to keep them waiting around too long, today. All right. Okay, we'll do agenda item 10 now. Well out of order. I was prepared to finish. Yeah. No, thanks. You should have reminded me. This kind of comes back, and it does involve not just members. It does involve members of the public. It's coming back to the lack of parish and town council representation within Sittingbourne town centre. And it came out of an idea I had doing a walk around in the town centre with an officer and another member, so Councillor Bonney and Officer Dean Rabor, in that there are maybe tasks that we as a group, those who I feel capable of doing, could carry out within the town centre. And I appreciate we have a couple of outlying wards. I do take that on board. That, say, for instance, Faversham Town Council would do. Faversham is very well presented because the town council is very proactive and they do quite a lot of tasks. And rather than come up with the word force, as in task force, I thought a volunteer group, much like the Milton Regis Society do already, much like Sittingbourne in Bloom do, but specific to Sittingbourne High Street. We can look at projects that we can take on, such as one of the suggestions was just cleaning the bins down because they don't get cleaned very often and they look rubbish, or giving them a coat of paint like they've done on the country park. recently. It's a very simple task that there isn't funding for the CMOs, the CMOs, community maintenance officers, road sweepers in old money. It's the sort of stuff they don't have no budget for to do anymore. And so it was just an idea that was floated, that maybe there'd be some members, and it would obviously have to be those who are more active, who wouldn't mind getting together. It wouldn't be a statutory body, it wouldn't be a working group per se. It would just be some of us town centre councillors, as it were. And again, I take on board Councillors Hampshire, Councillor Hall, Councillor Denny. You're not really town centre councillors. And I can understand, but if you go, well, I'd have enough to do.
I'll help you on the north side.
Well, yes, that's
I'd like to find somebody else.
So it's an idea that we can flesh out, I think, at a later date, as bearing in mind the time, and that we can put it on as an agenda item. So maybe come up with some other ideas what we could do. Does any member want to speak on that now, or are we going to table that as an agenda at a later date when it's not quite so late? Good, nice and quiet. I can take that on board. Thank you for your forbearance on that. I had forgotten all about it, even though it's my idea. Yes, I've been a bit thrown to that, I'll be honest. Now, we do have 14 and 15, which are matters referred to area committee by service committees. Now, should read chairs, not the service committee, if I'm correct. Yes.
Service committees could well.
Right, okay, I do apologise. So, yes, so anyone from an area committee, from a service committee, it would appear can refer matters to us. But if we want to refer something to a service committee, it goes via the chair, much like it would have gone via the cabinet member previously. I've got no matters at this stage to rise. Well, under the policing item, yeah, I think that will almost certainly be on the agenda anyway. Yes, as Charles just said, we could refer to community safety, as we've discussed about e-scooters and etc. I think that will be on the agenda anyway. There will be a pre-meeting. Who's on? Hands up, who's on communities? Yeah, everyone's trying to remember now. There is a pre-meeting to be arranged, but I think the initial agenda will be set, or the work programme for the year. But certainly a better interaction with the police or a high level is going to be high on the agenda, I believe. Well, it's certainly, if I've got anything to do with it, I'm on communities as well. So that's how things will be done going forward. Any questions on that, members? Councillor Rolls.
Well, the one thing we have discussed about, which we've been discussed at every other meeting, is the exit into Brownfield. I noticed the car park is now closed.
Yes.
By the Aston station, and it would be nice sometime if we really know what's going.
Thank you, Councillor Rolls. On the walk round, we did discuss that very matter, and we've ascertained that there is land available to put a sign on, despite KCC's reluctance to furnish a sign. So we are hoping that we can fit a sign in St Michael's Road that tells people that particular road is shut completely on a Saturday. So that's as much as of an update I can give at the moment. Any other questions from members or members of the public? Where's the exit now? Can we go out? So at 21:34, yes, I was going to say about 11:30, but at 21:34, I close this meeting. I'd like to thank you all for attending.